welcome you to the annual Talk Cybersecurity Summit. And these are the beginning of our afternoon sessions. We are recording this, and we will also be broadcasting here in a second. So what I'm going to do is change the slide to begin our, we're not really doing a lot of slides. We're going to use them as background in this session. But, you know, for the Facebook people, we'll move to the beginning of our other slide. Okay, let's see. So this is an interactive session. We're going to unmute everybody in a few minutes here, but first we're going to get ourselves up onto Facebook, and they will not be able to talk at us, but we'll be able to talk at them. Okay, admit some more people. Live on Facebook. Here we go. Let's see what happens. All righty, hold on. We're almost there with all these little button clicks. Okay. All right. Making progress here. Hold on. Preparing live streaming preview. I feel like we should have some drum rolls. Leanne, you have to work on that.
That's Princess Leah. Oh, Leanne, sorry.
Right, that's right.
My husband would agree.
Oh my gosh, okay, now is the second setting up your meeting for Facebook Live screen.
I see it saying meeting is now streaming live on Facebook, is what it says.
Redirecting us. Now this is the part that I always find a little confusing. It's like, for me, it's like I'm in my regular Facebook, but I don't want to be in regular Facebook. I want to see the slides, right? So let's see if we can see the slides. Well, let's get that for a minute. And go here. So can you see the slides?
I see question set number 1 on my screen.
That's more than I see. Hold on 1 second. All righty, here we go. Okie dokie, so you see this. It's question set 1. All righty.
I now see your PowerPoint. I don't see it presented. You know,
see what?
as you're running a presentation. I see your PowerPoint with all the slides listed on the left-hand side.
Oh, here we go. All right.
There you go.
Make me work at this. Okay.
Sorry about that.
All right, I'm welcoming all of you to our interactive session. You know what that means? It means that you're going to have to participate in this process here. So what we've done is we've created some questions. And for those of you that are inside Zoom right now, you will be unmuted here, and we will have a discussion. And so let me just do that. And then, you know, you may have to unmute yourself in some cases, right, if you've got your mute on. All right, so the idea here is we're going to have a little discussion. And so when we say an ounce of prevention in the enterprise, what do we mean? So this is a conversation about what you're doing or what you feel like you should be doing. One of the first things we want to talk about is, does network segmentation come up in your organization? Now, I'm going to have Dwan Haynes, who works for Aegon and is my co-host for this presentation, give us a little overview of what he does and then how he has seen network segmentation work in his, and then we'll allow the rest of you to jump in at will. So Dwan, if you can tell us a little bit about what you're up to and how things work inside Aegon.
Yeah, absolutely. So I perform a consultancy role within the organization, and one of the things we look at from a network segmentation perspective is, you know, just like anyone else, what are the primary goals you're trying to achieve with network segmentation? We know Internet of Things is a major item right now, and some people are using Internet of Things and network segmentation to keep those devices isolated. For some organizations, I'm a global organization, so we have a number of regulations that come into effect for us. We operate in Europe, so GDPR is a large regulation for us. We also have the CCPA in California, that regulation. So we use network segmentation to really try to keep those domains kind of separate. really to make sure that data that's generated in Europe stays in Europe and data that's generated in the US stays within the US. And we try to make sure as much as possible there's no transversal of that data across different country units. A lot of people have, a lot of different reasons why, but the biggest reason that we implement network segmentation is really to minimize our attack surface. We want to, as much as possible, minimize lateral spread in the event if we were to have some type of issue on our network. We really want to kind of isolate that and resolve it as soon as possible. So with that, that's a real brief overview, but I'm kind of interested to hear what other use cases others on this call might have.
Yeah, we try to make this easy for all of you that are on the call here. We've given you some ideas of the ways that you can do network segmentation, and we thought maybe you could pull out one and talk about how maybe you're using one of those. What about Dave Mattingly? Dave, you're good at picking and choosing what needs to be done in the organization. What are you using? And tell us a little bit about what your organization does. You're with Baptist still, right?
Yes, I'm with the Baptist Health System. I have 9 hospitals throughout the state and hundreds of doctors' offices, clinics, things like that. I'm not on the security team itself, although I do work closely with them. I'm on the data analytics team. So it's not a matter for my job of preventing outside people from getting in, but preventing that when anybody is in, that you only have access to what you should have access to data-wise. That we might be able to go to the same app, the same report, the same drill downs or BI thing. But if I was a nurse manager, I would only see data for myself and those who report to me in terms of productivity and things like that. If I'm an executive, I'll see everything. And if I'm in finance, I probably will also see everything and stuff like that, just to make sure that we all only have access to what we need access to. And I've set up all of the data security for that part, so it can be driven by what we call entity, so this hospital or, all the doctor's offices or, something like that. Then the department, and then the person, and then the specific report or app, and even the field in the app. Maybe I can go into the productivity as the boss of everything, and I see everything I need to be. But I might go in there and maybe I can see the hours people are working, but not the salaries. So it's still just one thing, but depending on who you are and what access you need, that's what you get.
Yeah, well, that makes sense, and especially hospitals. It's such an important piece of the puzzle. Matt?
Yeah,
and since we do have it based on assuming you have no permissions and everything is specifically granted, that if somebody, an intruder, were to get it in the network, unless they have hacked a specific employee's credentials and are using theirs, they're not going to see anything. And even if they did, they would only see what that person would see, not the keys of the kingdom.
So you've adopted the least privilege model, which is the recommended security principle for everyone to follow. One of the things I was going to kind of throw out there and see if anybody wanted to provide some feedback is that there are many ways that you can implement network segmentation, for example. You can use your current existing methodology. I know a lot of next-gen firewall vendors, tout their own solution. Some of them, like a Forescout, will integrate with the Palo Alto's network, for example. I'm wondering how many people took their legacy network infrastructure and then went in and actually did their network segmentation that method, or did they bring in a next-gen firewall and with the help of their vendor implement a solution from scratch? Did they use some automation? So there might be somebody on this call who may be looking at doing network segmentation who may not know where to start, and it may to them seem like it's going to be a daunting effort, which, Dave, as you just explained, that least privilege access model being able to get into the network and having zero visibility anything is preferred, but that means you've got to make sure you've got all your firewall rules set up, you got to have all your ACLs set up, you got to have all your RBAC controls in place, and that can be overwhelming for somebody who's undertaking that for the first time. So I was just wondering if someone who's either recently undertaken this effort or someone who may be looking to undertake this effort, whether they're using something off the shelf or whether they're using a legacy network and just sitting down and kind of planning all of that out. If anyone has anything to share.
Catherine?
I could jump in what we've done a little bit. Again, my experience might be a little different than your all's. I'm probably at a much smaller company where we have, a couple remote sites, about 200 or so employees. But, to answer your question, I mean, yes, we do segment, and I found it easy to really rip out and replace. We're really, recently become, more heavily invested just all in FortiGate, which has this concept of security fabric where you have complete visibility across your network. And it is much more for us, more of a manual assignment of our segmentation to where, obviously we segment, our guest networks, our IoT, try to separate out by our job function. Our artists might be on one segment, our developers another, finance another, and some of our admin people that really need to be locked down a lot more, they're on another. And it's all done in the name of lateral movement. It definitely is, as someone said earlier, is the reason that we go about that. And they have other more neat automated tools, such as the FortiNAC, network access control. But I just don't know if we're really big enough to justify that expense. Our network isn't super huge and complicated, so we definitely take a more manual approach for now. But the automation of it, I'm sure, is something we'll look at in the future. But it's really to control that lateral movement is the main concern for us going to it.
Okay, thank you for sharing.
Catherine,
Anybody
did you
else?
have anything to
Yeah.
add?
Yeah.
Or Andy? Okay. Well, we can move on to another question here. So moving right along, are you dealing with end user management? And what endpoint services do you use? And I just put this up as an example of one of the products that's out there on the web, and some of you might be familiar with Accenture. Would you, Dwan, give us a quick look at some of the things that you have to do around endpoint management?
Yeah, so we use endpoint management in a number of ways. The biggest one, of course, is for threat detection and trying to eradicate things if somebody has inadvertently clicked on an email that's a phishing attack or is being directed to a malicious site. The ability in some of your endpoint tools today to be able to contain an endpoint, we definitely leverage that. So there are times when we know we can capture from our endpoint product, we can capture the browsing history, we can see what led up to them actually browsing to that particular website or phishing hole or whatever it may be. And then we have tools that can also capture what are the changes that occurred on that workstation. So if we see they're trying to set up command and control, we can capture that. If we see that they're trying to override their host table and have them every time they issue a request go to somewhere specifically so they can capture keystrokes, we can capture that. And then again, as I mentioned before, we have the ability to come in and then contain that endpoint so that if you're in a flat network, it doesn't go out and have lateral spread. And because I infiltrated Dewan's machine, that it doesn't all of a sudden get access to 40 other machines on the network. And so I'm gonna, I guess, take a pause here, Don, and see if other people have other things they would like to talk about around the endpoint. And then I want to come back and actually talk about one thing that's not really on our slide, but just to kind of ask how people are handling, and that is, the growth of security agents on endpoints. A number of us work at organizations where we're regulated. Dave Mattingly just talked about Baptist. And when you're talking about HIPAA and those type of things, you have certain requirements you have to fulfill. So that also means some of these regulations say you have to have certain protections in place on your endpoints. And so one of the issues that we have is we have a number of agents, not just agents for managing the infrastructure or the endpoint itself and making sure you can push software, but we also have a lot of agents that are doing the endpoint and making sure we're capturing all the browsing history and, making sure we're looking for threats from using heuristics, from, antivirus products. So I'd also like to kind of hear what people's thoughts are on about endpoint sprawl is what I call it.
What about Regis? Would you like to speak? Anyone else? Jim? Okay. This is called an interactive session, people. We gotta add something.
Everybody's have to listen to me talk, and that could be bad.
Yeah.
Well, I can jump in and fill in a little bit about, what we did. Again, we might be really different than a lot of other people. The one thing that will probably amaze a lot of people on this call is, yes, we have about 250 people, but we don't have any PCs. We're all Macintosh. And, I definitely, obviously get in discussions quite a bit, with our firewall help support people about the importance of endpoint control, because we all try to do full packet inspection, but once the computer leaves the network, you're going to start losing all that. You're going to rely more on your your endpoint to do that. So we've implemented what I would say is an advanced endpoint solution. It's cloud managed, so they fully get the updates whether they're on or off network. And we also look for it to also really have web filtering and that detection and response also. But again, we might be a little bit different than others, but that's what we do. Very similar approach, I would say.
Yeah, what about actual products that people are using? I put up Arctic Wolf here, a Metallic, Force Point. Are there certain types of tools that you found really good success with?
Well, you've got Carbon Black, I think, on here, and you've got, what's the other one? CrowdStrike on here. So those are some endpoints people use. I know people use Symantec for some, antivirus as well. Hopefully no one's still using Kaspersky, but maybe I shouldn't say that. But I think Dave also had something he wanted to jump in and add on endpoint. Do you have something, Dave?
Yeah, I on Monday I spoke at a cybersecurity conference about the social engineering aspect, and in this case it was a 2-hour workshop on using improv comedy techniques for social engineering. And somebody gave me the great line of, when everything's made up and the endpoints don't matter. Since you mentioned endpoint sprawl, I like that term. I hadn't heard that. I know that our security team does, well, in general, the organization has been trying to reduce the enterprise level tools and products. I won't give specific, suites or names or anything, but when I started 5 years ago, we may have had, 10 major enterprise vendors and expenses, and now we're down to maybe half that. Consolidating and all of that, it has really, really helped us manage everything.
Absolutely. Okay.
Anybody else want to chime in with some thoughts on what tools they're using in the enterprise? Or seems like I think we have a couple of vendors. You want to mention anything about endpoint solutions? All right.
I just sold Kaspersky, ironically, just FYI.
You said you sell Kaspersky?
I recently sold it, yeah.
Okay. All right.
So it's still being sold out there. Actually, it was a renewal and an upgrade, but I didn't originally sell it. But it's still out there, yeah. Even despite the social, challenges being tied to Russian and those type of things. They're trying to rebrand themselves and get away from that. But, yeah, it's still out there.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's, I think it's up to each organization to, properly vet their solutions because, in reality, we are, it's security in depth. It's not only your perimeter, it's your interior, it's, insider threat, it's, malware and threat actors and persistent attacks and all of that. But as long as you have a plan in place or a process, a repeatable process in place to vet what solutions you're implementing, I think just about anyone will work. But you've Kaspersky, I only said that because, here recently there's been a lot of concerns about nation state actors and infiltrating that product. But I could say, and I probably shouldn't say it, but I will. Sorry, Don. But I can say the same thing about Zoom. When we were all at home, everybody's like, oh, let's all get on to Zoom. And, it had some security challenges, but they've rose to the occasion and put a lot of updates and upgrades in place to try to address that. So, everybody has to evolve to make sure people have confidence in their, and that the solutions we select are actually part of the solutions and not introducing new unmitigated problems. So.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on what Dave said. I think it's, vendor consolidation is definitely huge, right? And you don't have to have, I hear the term in my line of work, best of breed, and I really hate that, that terminology because I think there's some synergies to be built into, some good enough solutions that, to leverage cross communication between, different layers within your security infrastructure. And the more that the tools can communicate with each other, and, assuming you do not have a SIM log aggregator or something like that to accumulate all the logs. Sometimes good enough is good enough. You don't have to have best in breed in everything. You just can't afford it, right? For one thing, it's too expensive.
I completely agree, and I think to piggyback on you piggybacking on Dave's point, I do think I see a lot of vendors now adding in integrations between products, so they can say, hey, I may not be best of breed in this particular space, but because I now integrate with another, vertical of another product and how it satisfies, somebody may select my product because we integrate well together on another product that may not be best of breed. But you combine those two things together, and the fact that they can talk and communicate back and forth with APIs natively out of the box without having to hire a developer, that can make that solution, pretty attractive, especially if you don't have, to your point, Jim, a lot of big bucks to go and select, the Gartner Magic Quadrant, everyone that's in that high performing category. So,
well, they have the skill sets to be able to do that, right? And you gotta have highly skilled folks to be able to manage different solutions. So, the more you can consolidate into a single solution where the platform looks very similar, and dare I say single pane of glass, which is another phrase I hate to hear, but I hear it all the time. Especially from the vendor community, but ease of use, right? Because we specifically in the SMB space, there's challenges with, having skill sets within just the cybersecurity field itself, right? I mean, they're a network admin, trying to do their job plus security, and it gets to be where you just can't be everything.
completely agree. Absolutely.
This is the big question, right? Do you have a cyber incident response plan, right? And what segments of that plan have really been challenging, especially now that we have COVID-19? This is a selection here on the screen from the Cyber Readiness Institute, which is offering free micro-credentialing and badges for your website if you're a smaller business and you want to, go in and take the micro-credential. It's about 3.5 to 4 hours worth of real work, and it guides you through. We have cyber readiness training that Talk is doing. We just did a 6-week, 1 hour per week for 6 weeks, and you have some homework to basically implement cybersecurity, at the most basic level. And we found that 20 out of 22 companies, we had a lot of good response. About over 90% of them felt like it reminded them of particular things that they needed to do, right? So this is just the first page. You can see, of course, a cyber incident response plan has prepare, respond, and recover in it, right? And it's a roadmap. Dwan, do you want to just address some of the things that you have in your incident response plan?
Yeah, and I was going to say, I think to Matt's point earlier, I think because every organization is different from, you know, small business to medium to large to global. I think the biggest thing about having that response plan is at least just having the last word, a plan for what needs to happen in the event that there is some type of disruption to your business or infiltration to your business. We have a response plan that covers everything. You know, it's the business continuity planning, it's business resumption planning, it's what happens if you see this, it's chain of custody. But what I like about, and I promise you guys, I'm not really pitching this Cyber Readiness Institute, but I will say if you do not have a plan and your option is to go out and contract with somebody to come in and create a plan, this is a very good platform that you can actually start from scratch and actually develop your own plan and probably save yourself $150,000 to $200,000 in paying some folks to come in and sit down and investigate everything you have and how it's all tied together. But the key here is having some type of plan so that when something happens, you're able to follow a process systematically and you don't wind up leaving off the little small pieces that you neglected to actually cover. So within my organization, because we're global, we do have a plan. It is defined. It does, span across multiple areas. In our organization, you have somebody who handles Windows servers and somebody who handles Linux servers and somebody who handles the cloud and somebody who handles Linux in the cloud and somebody who handles, Google if it's in the cloud. We have a wide variety, but you got to have a good comprehensive plan that lays out the responsibilities of each specific team when something occurs. And again, I went through this training, even though we have a plan, just to go back and have a refresher of what are all the things that you need to take care of and cover within your response plan. And it was really good to go back and identify and make sure we had every base covered as it pertains to the plan. Because hopefully in general, we don't have a lot of times when we need to pull out our incident response plan. Hopefully we're all secure and we don't have to follow it. But just knowing it's there, even though you're going to do tabletop exercises and those type of things to follow it. But again, incident response plan is the cornerstone of your security program.
How do you make sure the workforce knows who's going to talk to whom in the event of an incident? I mean, is that all lined out on paper, Dwan, for your company?
Absolutely. And I mean, it's down to, if we're setting up bridge numbers, if we have to travel off site for something, what contracts do you have in place with vendors? Do you have to have hardware drop ship? Do you have to get special software license keys? I mean, it really is defined to the point that you don't want to have any surprises, right? When your business says, hey, we understand we've experienced some type of disruption to the business, but we want to get back up and running and back selling our product or wherever it may be, or we may need to run payroll. I mean, you've got to make sure that if you have one of these situations and you have to take some of your staff and fly them off somewhere, you better make sure payroll is one of those essential services and people are getting paid, because you'll find quite quickly some people are like, I don't know if I want to be halfway across the country or halfway across the world and my bills aren't getting paid for at home. So this thing with COVID, I think is also how many people had in their response plan if they had to go to a completely remote business model? How many people had all that covered? How many people took inventory and made sure that their key critical people were in places where they had infrastructure for home broadband that allowed them to still get online and be able to have video meetings just like this? You'd be amazed how many people decided, hey, being in the country was a great thing. And then this happened and, they're trying to communicate over satellite uplinks. So there's a lot of things that you have to make sure you have covered in your response plan, and understanding it's a living document. Going through and having these tabletop exercises are great things. I also, and Dave as well as I, participate with InfraGard. They have, security infrastructure type of, tabletop exercises. So those are good things to, participate in, and they prompt you to think about other things you may not have thought on a daily basis. Yeah. Dave, did you want to jump in there?
Yeah, thankfully, at my place, maybe, well, in the year leading up to all the COVID stuff, we had improved our remote capability, I'd say tenfold. So on the business end, the pipes were very strong and wide. With it, if I lived in the middle of nowhere, they couldn't help with that part. But they were ready for all kinds of remote workers to jump in at a moment's notice, which was very nice. And another exercise that is really, really cool, if you ever get the chance, check it out, is you've heard of SANS, S-A-N-S, a training company. They have a cyber village. And the cyber village, this is cyber warfare, but on the physical aspects of things. So imagine a little like model railroad town, out in front of you. And you're trying to hack into this thing, which is the electrical power grid, for the small town. And it's set up just like one. If you do, then that means the train is going to shut down, and the nuclear power plant over here is going to start flashing, and all kinds of bizarre things like that, that all interact with each other based on what you're doing digitally. It's very, very cool stuff.
So who thought DerbyCon would come up on a cybersecurity talk? And that's SCOTUS,
Yeah.
right, who runs the Cyber Village. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I even think something that some people may not have thought to add to their response plan is Dave very poignantly pointed out, hey, we have wide links for people to be able to get in. But how about training for our end users? You'd be amazed how many folks have called in and said, hey, I can't get connected. Or I'm connecting to Skype, or I'm connecting to Teams, or I'm connecting to Zooms or WebEx, or whatever else is out there. And they're like, hey, I get on and I keep getting disconnected, or people can't hear me. And nobody ever asked them to say, do you have your own circuit ran to your house? Do you have everybody and your kid on the Xbox Live or PlayStation at the same exact time you're trying to either host a meeting or participate in a meeting? Because that bandwidth is shared across everything that's running in your house. Have you went to your router and gave yourself, quality of service above everyone else so that you have reserved bandwidth? So those are some, we have security training programs to try to keep people safe from, phishing and those type of things. But I'm not sure we did an adequate job for some of our end users who may not be as technically savvy as the rest of us to know you're going to have a lot of factors that's going to happen on your home network. If everybody's streaming Netflix and playing video games, I guarantee your meeting is not going to be great unless you've got, fiber ran to your house. And even at that, it still may be a challenge if you've got 5 or 6 kids in the house at the same time. So I think those are all things that probably were not in people's response plans, but they're probably in some training guides now to help people identify their bandwidth at home, how to make sure that they can ensure they have the best bandwidth possible if they're going to work from home, to be able to conduct business from the home.
So what would you consider good technical external incident response support? What types of companies would you look at, or have you looked at in the past for that type of support?
That's a hard one for me because I try to be that external support person. If my daughter gets up and she can't get on her phone and get on the web, she's automatic, Daddy, something's wrong at home. What did you do, Daddy? The same thing my customers say, in my daily work. But I know we were looking at one point at some external customers, and they're external vendors, and they are out there. Some of them have products that you can install on your machine. The only challenge with that is it's great if I install it on my machine and then I'm connecting to VPN. Well, it's in a lot of ways only managing and measuring the bandwidth I'm using in my connection. It's not sitting on my router that has to manage the entire bandwidth and everybody and what they're doing from a bandwidth perspective. So some of these tools, they have devices. It's almost like a network tab. You can add it to your network and it's able to see everything. And I think those tools are great. I've just not researched them enough to be able to tell you some names. Maybe someone else on this call has, but unfortunately I haven't.
Anybody else want to jump in on that?
If not, it sounds like we all got homework.
Right. I'm going to have some homework here.
Yeah,
All right.
I don't want to make this a sales pitch. So they are out there. Yeah, there's certainly vendors that can do that, both from just a managed services perspective and tools that if you have the skill sets, you can deploy them yourself and manage them yourself. So there's two different ways, I guess, to go about that. And maybe real quick, just to circle back on the incident response plan. I think we all know you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? So I'm a big fan of cybersecurity frameworks. Anybody that I ever talk to, all my customers, I always bring that up probably very early in the conversation to if you haven't adopted one, you should consider adopting one. And look, you don't have to follow it to the letter, right? Because it's going to be a little bit unique for everyone, every organization, and not all controls are going to map to your environment. But things like incident response planning is toward the back end of, let's just say, I'll pick CIS 20 because that's the easiest one that most young businesses small businesses can wrap their brains around because there's 20 controls with it, right? So that's why they call it CIS 20. Towards the tail end of that, you start getting into the incident response stuff and business continuity planning and those types of things. So if you haven't adopted one of those, I would say lean into those because they'll help you plan and map out your security posture very well.
All good points. Thank you, Jim.
Well, in terms of responding to a problem, does anyone, like maybe Matt, you work with a smaller group of people, are there certain types of problems that you've been able to, really feel like you have your arms around and you were able to get the situation isolated? Are the things that you've been up against recently where, there has been a practice that became real?
I don't know. I mean, that's a tough question for us. I criticize our people always as being enablers to people, helping them just immediate support, but just to follow up on some other I think it was Jim mentioned the CIS 20, a tool that we try to use that, and something we found very usable. I think there's a company called Audit Scripts, and they actually have a free version of an Excel file that you can find that has a lot of the dashboards that will help you create those, and we've kind of modified it even a little bit further to really help and to show to our CEO what we're doing and how we're trying to progress. But and as far as the response goes, a while back we just really started trying to build out our network to withstand a complete building loss at all of our locations, and also move away from a VPN type of a strategy. And I think that really helped us a lot with implementing as everyone started with the COVID and going home. And we were fortunate to be 90% laptops, and I sit on some other things, and I don't know what the future of PC sales are, but they're probably really dim. You just feel like people aren't going to be buying but buying many desktops as it stands, and they're all going to go to laptops. Yeah.
Oh, well, it sounds like you've made some progress. That's good.
Yeah, and to totally agree. I mean, the support, the support is absolutely a challenge. As I've explained to a few people, they're like, "Oh, work from home's great. We love it. It's the best thing ever." And I said, it's been a lot of stress on us and our team because we've gone from troubleshooting networks, troubleshooting on our very blessed and very I'm not going to say well managed, but we know our network very well. And now, we're just taking calls, if someone's internet goes down for 10 minutes, we're getting calls and we're trying to troubleshoot God knows what they're doing. And we definitely are working on some plans to really help that in the future, but it's not going to be immediately done. But I don't know, I'm just maybe ultra paranoid, just seeing how they've canceled the Derby Festival and stuff like that, that maybe this isn't going to go away as fast as we all thought it would. But
no, that's true. I mean, even today, it's Bloomberg and CBSN. They're all talking about what is it? Over 15 states are seeing more cases, and Kentucky's right in there. We're not that big of a jump, but we are a jump up. So we are going to see this continue, and concerns around these issues in the cyber space will.
And oddly, I've been on like kind of our COVID committee, as you can imagine. And, we're taking a very empathetic approach to bringing people back because, we're fortunate, we're mostly professional services. And if you want to come back, if you don't want to come back, don't come back, continue to work at home. And a lot of people on our committee wasn't shocked, but I was flat out shocked by the survey that we did where really only 20% of our staff wants to come back. And wants to come back and work in the shared office. And maybe they'll change if things do open up more, but I just thought that was a interesting observation to share, because I would have definitely thought it would have been a lot more people would have wanted to be coming back, getting in the normal routine of things. But
well, having somebody make coffee for you is nice,
Yes.
And Matt, I was gonna say, I don't want to take us on too much of a tangent, but I'm one who works from home permanently, right? So when all of this kind of happened, there was all these surveys that people sent out, hey, want to check and see how you're doing? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Nothing's changed for me. But I think the issue is that there are, I shouldn't say the issue, the opportunity is that there are different types of people, right? Some people need that human interaction. Some people need that distraction. Whereas when I'm in the office, it's going to come off wrong. It's like, for some reason, everybody wants to come and talk to me and go, hey man, what are we going to do in football? Hey, how are we going to do in basketball? And I see your Louisville Cardinals up there on the wall. And so I'm right there with you. And my concern is, at least challenge for me is that for every time I get disrupted, it takes me another 10 to 15 minutes to focus back on my task. So when I'm at home, yeah, my Skype may be going off, or Teams, or whatever product you use, but you can turn that thing on do not disturb, and I don't have to, if I've got something I got to stay heads down on, I'm not distracted by that. But some people, they need that interaction, and so for them going to the office, that's exactly what they're looking for. For me, I really don't. Go ahead, Dave. Was that you? Yeah.
At my place, even though we all had our own private offices and we were all in the same hallway, within 1 door, 2 door, 3 doors, whatever, away from each other, almost every one of our meetings was over WebEx anyway. So we would all just sit in our offices by ourselves, because we've got 2 screens, and we can, oh yeah, that's right, let me bring that up, and we can do the screen shares and captures and make changes right there. It was really, really productive. If we want to go see somebody, yeah, we take 10 steps, and there's the person I was just talking to up on the big screen. But it was not, it was very, very rarely disruptive.
Yeah. And I was
so
going to say,
moving to work from home was, we barely noticed it, almost.
Yeah. And I was going to say, Matt, to your point about, I don't think you quite staying up at night worrying about things. We do have some issues with people working remote from home, right? If you got to update whatever antivirus product you're using, or you've got to update whatever other security endpoint, well, now you've got to take into effect the size of that update, what that end user's network bandwidth looks like. Are you knocking other things on the network offline because you're transmitting all these updates? What happens if they don't get those updates? Are they getting their machines infected? They're also on the network with other machines who don't have your corporate protections, they're opening emails and they have lateral spread at their home, and now it's trying to attack your machine, your corporate machine at home with the laptop. So I'm with you on the stand up at night, man. I'm with you there. So I definitely want to make sure that, people understood that that's a concern as well. It's not just the flexibility of people working from home. It's also the additional strain and pressure on your IT staff, making sure that those endpoints are covered. So that was a good point you brought up.
Well, do you think that from a recovery point of view, if an incident occurs, is it harder to deal with if everyone in the company is remote, or is it about the same?
Well, I would even say not just that type of incident. If I have a laptop and my laptop fails, well, do I mail that back in? And then what am I using while my laptop is down? Is the company sending another laptop out to me? That really needs to all be part of your response plan. How do you handle that mechanism? So I think there's a number of things. Do you allow your own device to be able to connect, over VPN back to your home network so that I have something to use while I'm offline? I mean, there's a number of things that your IT staff has to sit and think about, but I'm interested to hear what someone else, how they handle those things. Matt, Dave, or Jim, if you want to tell us what some of your customers are doing, I'm willing to definitely hear them out on it.
Well, I think I'll take a shot at it. I think culture is certainly the culture of the organization is part of that, right? And how you, I guess, dare I say, the age of the organization. Right, some may be a little bit more progressive than others, and as it relates to embracing bleeding edge technologies like Zoom and WebEx and those types of technologies where remote work is encouraged versus some of the older school type of ways where you have to be in the office. And I think some businesses, depending on what they are, if you're manufacturing, obviously you got to have people on the floor, people there to manage the workforce that's there. So I think depending on the industry vertical, it probably lends itself better to be on site versus remote. Or at least maybe not in every department within the organization, but some departments are probably able to work remotely more easily than other departments, I guess is the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah. Dave, do you have some comments you want to make?
Well, for me being in healthcare, I don't work in a hospital. I'm at the headquarters. And I'm going to take a stab at the numbers, but let's say out of our 20,000 people, let's say 2/3 are medical, doctors, nurses, lab techs, things like that. For them, computers are just a thing to let them do the job that they're there to do. It isn't their main focus. For me, I practically have a laptop, as a pillow. I'm surrounded by tech constantly. So for me, I use my own one of my own laptops to connect. I always have done that. I've got plenty. I don't want a company thing, then I'm responsible for that. I'd rather just have my own thing. Since we VPN, we've got the two-factor, the phone. It's safe because I'm only logging into my machine, with my credentials back at the office. I'm just using a different front end to get there, and that way it doesn't matter what my end tech is or where I am. I'm always using the same machine as far as the company is concerned. My desktop back at the office, even if I'm not there. And if a laptop busts, I grab another one and I'm okay. Yeah. I even will usually bring a personal laptop to the office just to leave there in case I have a meeting down the hall and I still want to take notes. So rather than worry about having company equipment everywhere, I just leave my personal stuff. strewn about.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I mean, you're highlighting that there is definitely more than one way to skin this cat. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the only thing I would add and throw in on that top of that with us is, yes, my two guys are having to drive around and meet people in parking lots and maybe grab their laptop if they're grabbing stuff. But what was I going to say? Yes, we only allow corporate-owned computers to connect into certain aspects of our storage and be able to access stuff now. That the phones is a little different issue, and what I've done is, and I know we're a smaller department, but you know that was really one of our reasons for consolidating all to one platform. And for us, it's Macintosh. I've already said that just because of what we are, we're never going to be able to get rid of them. And then I think what's really helped is just us committing to that one platform and really having them know how to provision and roll out and automate, you know, the distribution to people. So I believe you might have asked, you know, how do we handle, you know, when a laptop's down, that they're down? The answer is, you know, that they're down. I've told people, you know, if you're down, that still means over 99% of our network and people are up and they're working. But, you know, we do, you know, utilize products to help us, you know, roll out. I don't want to get all into it, but, you know, roll out and provision those computers for them. And then, you know, just general, as I'm sure many more people are going to the cloud, you know, I mean, we don't let people really save stuff locally and stuff like that. And it really doesn't take that long. I mean, with a lot of the automation with various tools out there, I imagine on Windows and PC, I mean, Mac and PC side, it can be really quick, you know, to get something back in the hands of the user. For us, you know, being a smaller company.
Yeah.
Backup now considered pretty ubiquitous. I mean, everybody uses a particular type of backup. Is there anything that needs to be said about that piece of the puzzle?
I think people use a wide variety of solutions. I still think you have, you know, NAS and SAN on-prem. I think you probably see a lot of people now starting to use storage in the cloud, just simply because you can connect to it, as Dave said, with any device, as long as you know, you're authenticating or you have your, you know, private keys to be able to do that. And, you know, there are even solutions where people are using, you know, I don't want to call them desktops, but they're using Windows or Linux servers, you know, or endpoints in the cloud as well. So now, as long as I have some device, even whether it's my tablet, that I can get to the cloud, well, I can get to my machine. And so that's another method in which I didn't want to go into that because it's probably its own discussion. But that's also a solution that people have actually pursued.
Yeah, backups are important, but the most important part is to practice restoring your backups. Otherwise, all you've done is waste a lot of time, exactly. Especially if they are password protected and those passwords change over time. If I need to restore a backup from 2 years ago because of some, you know, auditor's requirements, what was the password then? I have no idea. Well, sorry, we can't get you the old records, you know.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
Oh, it's absolutely correct. I mean, I know of at least one large company here in Louisville that when they needed their backup, it was corrupt and nobody had checked it for 3 years to see if the system was working, and it was completely down. And there was not even anything going back to 3 years. So yeah, I mean, it happens with very big companies as well as little companies.
And the challenge is
also important to know how long restoring a backup takes. If you haven't tried in a long time, oh my gosh, we're at 1% and it's been half an hour. It would be good to know that going in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say, and we hear these stories, what Dave's talking about, we all go, oh, it's just an inconvenience, right? Well, some of these regulations, that's real money that you're paying. If you cannot produce that evidence back to an auditor or to a regulator, you might be paying some big bucks on a fine.
If your data is gone and you have to restore from backups, For some companies, it's an inconvenience. If I'm UPS or Amazon, that's what, $10 million a second or something crazy that they're losing.
Well, this has been a good discussion. We're going to wrap this up, and I'm going to remind you that you can visit talklou.com, our website for the Technology Association of Louisville, Kentucky. And we want to thank Dwan for being with us and some of our active panelists from the audience. This has been really useful, and don't forget that Cyber Readiness Institute is there also. You could just type it in, cyberreadinessinstitute.org, and it comes right up, and you can take a look at the curriculum, even if you want to use it with your employee staff. That might be another way to, push out something. So we are going to dismiss, and then we're running into our next session, which is on ransomware, and we're going to have a state, local, and federal panel, so it should be very interesting. Look forward to seeing you on that, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, guys.